Welcome, Bomber fans, to this special edition of the Essendon Board Podcast. I'm the Prosecutor, and in this week's edition of the podcast, we'll be talking all things ASADA. Nothing is off limits in this edition as we look at the key players in the saga, what is unfolded, what the outcome may be, and general drugs in sport talk. We'll also be looking at the media and opposition fan contributions to this saga, from Barrett to Wilson and all so-called journalists in between. We'll prosecute them all. As with every complex story, it's always best to start from the beginning, and that being the now infamous press conference on the February 5th, where David Evans announced that the Essendon Football Club will be requesting the assistance of the Australian Sport Anti-Doping Authority to investigate the club's 2012 supplement program after disturbing news was made aware to the club's administration within the 48 hours previous to the press conference. This press conference was followed by a joint press conference by the Australian Crime Commission, the ACCC, and ASADA on February 7th, in what is now dubbed the darkest day in Australian sporting history, as the ACC, with the assistance of ASADA, compiled a report into widespread drug use and corruption throughout the major sporting codes of Australia. The man seemingly at the centre of the investigation is a man by the name of Stephen Dank, a man who was employed as a self-titled sports scientist who came to the club at the recommendation of the head of the fitness department, Dean Robertson, who is affectionately known as the Weapon. Dank, having previously worked for Manly, Cronulla and the Gold Coast, while also advising Robinson daily during his tenure at Geelong. Through leaked emails, it is evident that Stephen Dank came into the club with the mandate to fast-tracking the physical development of the playing list in 2012, while adhering to the three main criteria as stipulated by James Hird. The criteria being as follows. 1. The player's welfare was the number one priority. 2. All supplements were ticked off by ASADA. And 3. That everything was to be ticked off by the club doctor. Since then, it has emerged that an unknown quantity of players, including Captain Jobe Watson, were likely administered an anti-obesity drug by the name of AOD 9604. Much debate has since followed as to the legality of this substance, which led to WADA issuing a statement on April 22 which stated, quote, AOD 9604 is a substance still under preclinical and clinical development and has not been approved for therapeutic use by any government health authority in the world. Therefore, under the 2013 Prohibited Substances and Methods list, the substance falls into the Section 0 category, end quote. Following from WADA's statement, it has emerged that ASADA's lead investigator has described the chances of a successful prosecution against AOD 9604 to be very, very, very low. It has also emerged that confusion over the status of AOD 9604 had reigned during the 2012 and the beginning of 2013, as the suggestions emerged that ASADA issued incorrect or incomplete advice to athletes and club officials during the above time period, in which case it would be unlikely that ASADA would pursue the players or club over any use of AOD 9604. However, the club's problems don't end with AOD 9604. Two other substances, hexarelin and thymocin, now seem to form the basis of concern for the club. Both substances fall under Section 2 of WADA's prohibited list as performance-enhancing drugs. In the case of hexarelin, Dank claims to have injected multiple coaches, including James Hird and assistant coach Simon Goodwin, with the substance. Claims strongly rejected by James Hird. It was also revealed that an invoice existed at the club for the purchase of the substance. However, it is believed that the club was reimbursed for this order in the form of credit and the product returned. The matter of thymocin is a bit more complex. There are currently two variants of thymocin, a banned variant known as thymocin beta 4 and a legal variant known as thymocin alpha 1. Which substance was taken is unclear, as consent forms shown by the players showed that thymocin was used as a broad term and did not identify which specific substance. Though strong circumstantial evidence provided by the age suggests that the banned variant may be the one used. The potential outcomes of this investigation are virtually limitless, with the common proposed penalties varying between a financial penalty, the loss of draft picks, the loss of premiership points, and the suspension of players for up to 2 years. Whatever that may be, will likely be revealed when ASADA announces the findings of its near 6-month investigation within the coming weeks. What is certain at this stage is that serious failures in governance occurred during the 2012 season. In response, David Evans and the board commissioned an investigation to be undertaken by Dr. Ziggy Switkowski in order to understand just how these failures were allowed to occur. On the 6th of May, Dr. Ziggy Switkowski delivered his report, in which he identified a, quote, a pharmacological experimental environment never adequately controlled or challenged or documented within the club in the period under review, end quote. The report ultimately led to the resignation of club CEO Ian Robson, who resigned on the 22nd of May and was replaced in the interim capacity by Ray Gunston. Robson has since taken up the position of CEO at Melbourne Victory. As it stands, Robson, along with Duncan Robinson, of which the latter still remains on Essendon's payroll, have been the major casualties of this program, despite constant calls of media personalities such as Caroline Wilson and Patrick Smith for James Hird to fall on his sword. With the eve of the home and away season approaching and finals on the horizon, Essendon fans and indeed sporting fans countrywide await the delivery of the ASADA investigation, due to be delivered within the next couple of weeks, to see the full extent of just what has unfolded at Essendon in 2012. To help me dissect all of these issues, I'm happy to welcome my fellow Essendon posters eth-dog and Raskolnikov to discuss all the complexities surrounding the investigation. To begin with, we'll take a look at the key personnel, beginning with the senior coach James Hird. So I'll start with you, Eth. What role did you think James Hird played in this, and what do you think of the treatment he's received in the media?
I reckon he's been unfairly dealt with, to be honest. Like, sure, he wanted to gain an edge like all coaches do. I doubt you'll find a club in the world, a professional club in the world, who won't be trying to find new stuff to give themselves an advantage. And he was given the all clear by Dank that these supplements were all clear from ASADA. Admittedly, he has been a bit negligent, but still, if you pay somebody to do this job, you expect them to do it well. And
well, it's an interesting thing because I don't know how you can call it, because a lot of people like to call it, systematic doping and in an effort to cheat. But if he's set out the guidelines that everything must be within wider anti-doping guidelines, and they've contacted ASADA over supplements and they've given them all clear. I don't see how it's cheating. And even still, if he's done that, like, there was a ridiculous article on James Hird before the Fremantle game, which obviously followed with an outburst of emotion. But it was the article by, again, I think it might have been Caroline Wilson or The Age investigative journalists, but it was surrounding the use of, I think it was Haraxilin by the coaches. It wasn't illegal. It's not illegal for coaches to use unless on match day, I believe. But again, it was just these sort of things from Fairfax in particular, which has surprised me, that are really attacking the character of Hird, and it's almost, they've had a similar sort of things in the past where they set a target, the media, as in, obviously they had Robson and they have a couple others like Mark Thompson at the start, which is another story. We'll get to that when we get back to Caroline Wilson. But where they have these targets, and James Hird's obviously the golden boy, he's seen as the golden boy from the outside, and it's become a point where James Hird is sort of like the where the trenches are being dug, so to speak, where the defence has been set up, and if you go for James Hird, you're going after Essendon in a sense with this personal crusade. So it's interesting how the media actually have used James Hird as his figure and have just unrelenting in their attack of him, especially Fairfax. And I think it's getting to the point where it's going beyond reporting to just presenting an agenda and using journalism as a fabrication of that. I don't know about you guys, but I think just the treatment of James Hird as an individual, despite the lack of real evidence to suggest he's actually being willfully negligent, is absurd, to be honest.
It'd be interesting if it was another club, what the coach would have been put through. It just seems like because it was James Hird that he was it was an open day to have a go at him because other supporters know how highly James Hird is held amongst the Essendon club, and so they saw it as a chance to bring the club down. Whereas if it had been another club who had a much lower profile coach, it wasn't as intricately tied up with the club as James Hird is with Essendon, whether he'd been would be put through that. And I know that a lot of other opposition supporters say that Essendon have almost a cult-like reverence for James Hird, and I don't know whether it's true or not. I know that
undoubtedly there's a large amount of faith placed in him, but whether that becomes a cult personality sort of complex, that's a different question.
Yeah.
But you're right about how this would be done at other clubs. Not to say that James Hird is only being victimised because he's Essendon, but it'd be interesting to see, if this happened at Collingwood, whether, say, Eddie Maguire might be the main target of an agenda, so to speak, or if you went to, even if you went to other clubs, like I'm trying to think of them, like David, if you went to Port Adelaide, and they might have maybe targeted David Koch instead of Ken Hinkley.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, or even a Malcolm Blight at Gold Coast instead of McKenna.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting question.
I noticed a post on the main board on BigFooty today that by a Collingwood supporter saying he doesn't understand the way that Essendon supporters have been backing Hurt. He said that if Collingwood were involved in the situation or that the only consequence they had was the removal of the coach, then they'd be basically jumping up and down with joy. And he doesn't understand why we see the need to defend Herd so much.
Yeah, but that's pissed easy to say for an opposition supporter, though. And I guess it's the same thing that's always happened to in any of these sagas. Like, it's easy to lob grenades in there, and it's point scoring. That's all it is. But if the shoe was on the other foot, it probably would be the exact reverse scenario. Like, if it was Collingwood, would probably be calling for Buckley and Maguire's head, as opposed to, sort of this due process sort of line. That's not to say that, we're wrong when we call for due process, but it's a passionate game, and a point scoring, especially in a football forum, for God's sake, is very much sort of the name of the game when it comes to dealing with opposition supporters.
Yeah.
But okay, so we'll move on from James Hird. We'll go on to Ian Robson. But in any case, he's been the major casualty in this investigation, who handed in his resignation after it was revealed in the Switkowski report that the CEO was ultimately responsible for knowing the day-to-day business of the football club. So, I guess, what are our thoughts on Ian Robson? Was he negligent in his duties? Was he a scapegoat? Or was he just not an Essendon... Well, I guess that's a scapegoat, but was he just unlucky, I guess? So, do you want to go first, Rasky?
Yeah, I don't know that he was... I don't know that we ever really know until the whole case is over and all the consequences have been played out, what his role was in it. But I think in a way, at the moment, I see him as probably a bit negligent. I think that surely even if it's proven that and we come through unscathed, then we're vindicated. I think that there should have been a bigger element of accountability by him. I think that the whole fact that we're going through this as a club makes me think that there was some kind of negligibility going on. Not necessarily, not illegal, but just things weren't done probably the way they should have been done.
I guess it all comes back to the infamous letter now from Dr. Reid that's gone missing. And I don't know, that would be very interesting to find out, if we ever do find out, what actually happened to that letter. And I mean, even if he wrote a letter, the fact is that not that we know, we don't know if this didn't happen, but nothing has suggested so far that Dr. Bruce Reid didn't actually go to Ian Robson and explain his misgivings about the program face to face. And I mean, if Robson isn't approachable like that, then I think you've got problems in the first place as well. But what about you, F? What did you think about Ian Robson's dismissal or resignation?
I thought it was good. There was stuff up at a managerial level at some point, and well, we're a sort of club that the buck stops at the top, and managerially, Robson's at the top.
Yep.
I really appreciate what he's done for the Essendon Football Club. He's been immense. He's increased our funding into the football department while posting profits, something Peter Jackson could never do. He was a really good CEO, except he managed the whole thing poorly, in my opinion.
Exactly. I think he was, for the most part, a very successful and a very invigorating CEO, but however, he failed once, and in such a, Essendon's a $65 million club, and something that's just those one little mistakes that can set the ship off course and veer it into an iceberg. So it's unfortunate because he was fantastic for the most part, but these things happen, and ultimately he's got to take responsibility, which he did. And I think the fact that Melbourne Victory were very willing to hire him says a lot too. That it wasn't the supplement program in its entirety wasn't his fault. It was just the slight governance issue that he didn't know about it. And I mean, I say slight, and probably people get their back up over that. But the fact is, it was a slight sort of thing. Like that is day-to-day stuff. Like, you can't know everything that happens with the players and all that sort of stuff, and eventually you've got to have a bit of trust. He probably no doubt knew about the supplement program in a broad sense, but no doubt he didn't know the specifics. So, I feel sorry for him, but it's a tough world, and I think it just had to happen. I think he realised that too. Okay, we'll move on to David Evans now. Obviously the president of the club, the chairman of the board. I think he's been fantastic throughout this, to be honest. I think he's the one staff member who's come out of this, maybe not in opposition eyes, but at least in Essendon eyes, to be, he's come out more favourable than when he started. I think he's fantastic. He's been fantastic since the breaking of the scandal, dealing with everything that needs to be dealing with in a efficient, brutal fashion where needed to be, and I personally hope he gets re-elected, and I think he will, to be honest. So
I think he's been a very strong leader in it all. I think he's really, held the club together and been a big link between the club and the supporters, and kept the supporters in touch as much as he possibly can through the whole ordeal. And I can't really remember exact details of the speech that he gave a couple of weeks ago, but it was on the Essendon website, just reassuring the fans that everything was all right. And it just came across as not just a piece of fluff sort of speech, but a very genuine one that gave the supporters a lot of reassurance.
He comes across as a man who seems like he's in control.
Yeah.
So he doesn't look out of his depth. He looks calm, confident, and knows what he needs to do. And I don't think you can really underestimate how much that's needed in a time like this for the football club. Alright, so we'll move on to Stephen Dank. We'll get this over with. It's the elephant in the room. I think we'll tie him in with Robinson, to be honest, because I mean, with various roles and various roles to play out in this saga, and to varying degrees. So start with Stephen Dank. I'm just going to state the obvious. How the hell did we let him into our club?
Well,
I just don't comprehend. I mean, he's been sacked pretty much. He got sacked from the Gold Coast after about 6 weeks. He was left very, very bad terms at Cronulla, I believe it was. And from the statement Essendon released the other day, it was at the urging of Dean Robinson. But I mean, what? How did he pass? Surely we would have screened him before we said to Robinson, "Yep, bring him in." Surely.
Well, you'd think so.
You'd hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just don't know whether, and I'm probably not 100% up with this in my own knowledge of the situation, but isn't it the fact that if he, if it's proven that it looks like it has been that this was this supplement was not prohibited at the time, does that put him in the clear? What else has he done to the club to actually that was of his own negligence or?
Apparently, he might be in a bit of trouble in regards to the misuse of the club's funds. Potentially, he might be up on assault charges or something similar if he administered Haraxilin to James Hird without his knowledge. That's a potential. But there's a lot of... That will come out in due course, but if he's administered a substance to James Hird without telling him what it was, and he's admitted that publicly that he gave Haraxilin to him, then he could potentially be done for assault because, it's... So Dank's got a lot of issues, and that's just at Essendon, because, I mean, you go back to Cronulla as well, and apparently he has ties to bikies in Melbourne, specifically a few of those at, I think it's Doherty's gym. So, I think Dank's got a lot to worry about, and I wouldn't be expecting him to speak to ASADA unless compelled, and even then, I don't think he's going to go in lightly. I think he's going to be he'll lawyer up, and he'll be dragged in kicking and screaming. So I think Dank's in a lot of trouble. I think he knows that. I think he's just sort of pushing the chest out and hoping for the best, really. So it just boggles my mind though that he was allowed into the club.
Yeah.
And it boggles the mind too how this one man went from, because no one knew who he was before this saga. Like, no Essendon supporter had any idea who was at the club or who he was. Yet,
no, I haven't heard of him before. Thing.
Yet this guy has been, I don't want to say single-handedly, but a large part of perhaps the biggest scandal in VFL, AFL football. It just boggles the mind, to be honest.
Yeah.
And
to be fair, how many club supporters know their sports science stuff?
Oh, definitely, but I guess the difference in this case was that it appears that Dank was such a vital part of the fitness team, because obviously we all knew about the weapon, and he just became a self-parody in the end. But his right-hand man, and what appears like, the most vital man in the fitness department, just was a completely unknown person.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's so much, though, we can't really talk about, because we just don't know what actually happened. Because, I mean, our whole outlook on Dank might change based upon one conversation with ASADA and, the different wording of a sentence. So, it's hard to really say with him, but I guess the only thing we can really comment on is how he got employed in the first place, which is, I guess, one of those things that was addressed in the Switkowski report, probably in the more detailed version. But, we'll move on from that, and I think the same with Robinson. It's a bit, there's not much you can really say about him, because you don't really know if this was Dank's operation or what Robinson's involvement was. And to be honest, he's kept pretty quiet over the whole thing.
Credit to him for that.
Yeah, I think he's smart enough to realise that putting himself in the public light's only going to make him the face of it. He's better off to sit back, take his payout from Essendon, and because he's He's still being paid from memory.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's still on the payroll. He's just not going to be coming back, so... I mean, why wouldn't you just sit back, really? He's spoken to ASADA. He doesn't have to do anything more, and he's just keeping quiet. I've got no doubt he's distressed, and I think he didn't intend for it to get to this stage, but... You know, it happens. And I guess that throws up questions about what happened at Geelong, too. Because I have no doubt that they would have taken similar supplements at Geelong, but, of course, the Section 0 didn't come in until 2011, so...
Yeah.
It'd be very interesting. I think it's one of the reasons, too, why I think the AFL would be very, very nervous if Dank is compelled to be questioned.
Well, it could bring the whole Geelong regime down, and I don't know, it's just could be a whole Melbourne Storm thing over again, where a club is basically stripped of its premierships if it came down that Geelong was just as culpable as Essendon were in the whole thing if it gets proven that there were illegal things going on.
It'd be very interesting to see what happened, because I don't think they'd be in that much trouble, but if they're taking the same supplements as Essendon did, despite, you know, perhaps the legality of them then it just leaves such a sour taste in the mouth, though. But okay, we'll move on. We might brighten the mood up a bit, and we'll talk about journalists for the time being, and we'll tie that in. We'll start with Caroline Wilson, shall we? Everyone's favourite.
Yay!
I'm trying to think of a witty segment title, because, you know, you got Caro's Arrow and all that sort of stuff, but can't think of any, to be honest. It's just can't think of anything. I'm trying to think of Prosecutor references and all that sort of stuff, but it's not coming to me, so we'll get straight into it. Obviously, Caro strongly refutes James Hurd's assertion that her article is factually incorrect. Her latest one, at least. You know, there's normally a weekly one. To be honest, I feel sorry for her husband. Not because of who she is, but the fact her husband is actually an Essendon supporter. I don't know if you knew that. But
I didn't even know she had a husband.
She has a husband who is, by all reports, is actually an Essendon supporter. And I don't know about you, but imagine if you have Caroline Wilson coming back to your place every night after she's just written that article.
I can imagine he'd be a very henpecked husband.
Oh, he must have a lot of patience.
Yeah.
Or you can just tell where he's pissed Caro off, because the next day there'll be an article on Essendon. So whatever happens, he's obviously not doing something right on a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting one, and I raised it on the main board podcast last night, where these days the lines between a reporter and an opinion writer is getting very much blurred. I think Caroline Wilson is one of those. She's the protege for that. The prototype for that, because she reports, but she inputs her agendas and her opinions into it as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, she'll come off as reporting facts, but she's merely giving her opinion. And it's really frustrating. And Caro is an interesting one, because we all love it when she's giving it to North, or she's giving it to Carlton or Melbourne or something like that. I'd say, we love it when she gives it to Richmond, but we all know she doesn't give it to Richmond, does she?
Yeah.
But it's when she attacks you really start to understand how frustrating she is, because she's, in a technical sense, she's a brilliant writer. Like, as in, from a theoretical point of view, but the substance in the article, of course, is a different matter. I think that's what the main concern with Caro is.
Yeah.
So, I must admit, I really did like Essendon's statement yesterday. I don't think they'll go down the legal route with it, to be honest. I think that was just a bit of a you're on notice. Pretty much calling Caro's bluff, and I think she called it back, so, it might be a bit of back and forth there, but I guess she's symptomatic of the media these days, where it's the here and now and call for their head straight away and then worry about the repercussions and the facts later.
Yeah.
Well, it's very interesting that I've been on BigFooty for over 10 years, and the whole time she's never had a good reputation on BigFooty. But I found it really interesting today that Bomber Swarm 2, who's now been banned, actually started on the main board that about Caroline Wilson.
Yep.
And it was a total turnabout on the turnaround on behalf of the opposition supporters. And it was a very dumb thread to start, but I had to laugh at the way that the last 10 years there's been really almost joking about Caroline Wilson and her journalism and her professionalism. But because she's targeted Essendon, she's now come off as a great white hope amongst opposition supporters.
Yeah, it's just selective quotes and all that sort of stuff, and it's happened all the time. It's happened always in the ASADA forums as well. On both sides, that is, because Essendon supporters are just as guilty as opposition supporters. And that's just, purely picking and choosing when to believe a reporter. Like, we're all happy to believe Damian Barrett. Well, not all of us, but we're all happy to believe Damian Barrett when he's got the positive news. But when it's negative news, it's just like, Damian Barrett, he's useless and all that sort of stuff. But actually, I'm going to take a point of indulgence here. I'm going to do the Prosecutor slam. I'm going to prosecute Damian Barrett here. And it's over this... It's semi-related to the ASADA investigation in a very, very tangible way. But in his Sliding Doors article the other week where he had the, it's disgraceful that Essendon supporters boo West Coast, Brett Stanton hasn't forgot. Well, if you've got kids at home and you're listening to this, cover their ears right now because I'm going to go on an absolute rage here. And this is probably going to have to be edited out. But anyway, Damian Barrett, go f*** yourself. Essendon supporters never booed him. He received a mild Bronx cheer when he left the grounds after being subbed. Now, Essendon supporters at the time didn't know he was subbed off with injury, and we shouldn't have Bronx cheered him. But I didn't Bronx cheer him personally. But even still, he wasn't booed. I doubt he's actually thinking about it now. And even still, what club doesn't Bronx cheer people? I mean, there was a thread started on the main board by NBA Man 1. In which he goes, Brent Stanton, rah, 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 hypocritical. Well, someone pointed out to him that it was just a Bronx cheer or something like that. Or, no, they pointed out to him that Lockie Henderson copped a bit of treatment from Carlton supporters. And his justification was that Henderson was just Bronx cheered. Well, hello, world. So is Brent Stanton. I've got no idea how that keeps being brought up as hypocritical by Essendon supporters. So... Damian Barrett, watch a bloody game for once and don't join this bandwagon. I'd say you're better than that, but you're not. Back to other things anyway. Essendon supporters and opposition supporters, very selective with their quotes, and I guess it's another example too with Caro recently where if it's not your team, then she's fine. I think that was the same with the Melbourne saga too. Melbourne supporters hated her during that, but afterwards now they're all on the main board singing her praises. I don't know about you. I guess that's what you've been noticing too there, Rasky.
Yeah, definitely. It's just quite funny that they'll change. A lot of the opposition supporters on the main board will change their tune if it concerns Essendon. And I guess we do that a lot too with opposition clubs, but it's just funny that they're so... fragile and willing to change according to the circumstances.
Okay, so we'll move on from Caro, and we'll move on. I'm going to move on to one of my favourites, and that man is the one and only John Ralph, or as Fogdog, or Flogdog as the main board likes to call him, and. I think he put it most eloquently today on Bomber Blitz. I don't know if any of you saw it, but he described John Ralph as Caroline Wilson with a vagina.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And I'd say that's a pretty bloody apt comparison. He's just comes off as the most wannabe sensationalist hack I've ever seen. I don't know if you saw his article. I think it was today or even yesterday when he was hedging bets with... Jared Waitley's statement by saying, apparently, he's canvassed a fan in the outer, and apparently, Essendon fans would rather be punished in 2013 and start with a clean slate. Well, for God's sake, what is he canvassed Essendon fan? He said fan in the outer. Well, for God's sake. That's apparently now one Essendon fan out there is apparently, can be extrapolated to represent the whole Essendon group, and the mind boggles how John Ralph, is symptomatic of everything that's wrong with this. Sensationalist journalist, if you want to call him a journalist, who focuses purely on the headline of the now, doesn't care about what he said in the past, doesn't care if he contradicts himself. Just is in there for a headline, a cheap thrill from trolling other clubs. And again, he's another Richmond supporter, shock jock, when it comes to journalists, which is, won't say a bad Richmond article from him. But it's just frustrating, and the fact that he's in such a position to, not just with Essendon, but clubs in general, where he can just write this tripe and gather headlines off it. It's frustrating. He's everything that I think is wrong with the journalism industry as it is.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just don't read the Herald Sun. It's just easier that way.
To be honest, you go on.
What I read are the cartoons in The Age and Emma Quayle's draft profiles, and sometimes a match report in The Age, and that's it.
Yeah,
it's just easier.
I would read Real Football, or Real Footy, whatever they call it, a lot more if they got an improved user interface.
Do you mean Inside Football?
No, as in Real Footy, as in The Age's football site.
Oh, yeah.
If they had an improved user interface, like if they had the Herald Sun's interface, because they have a good interface, I'll give them that. If they had that, I'd probably use it more, but just for pure ease, I seem to always click on the Herald Sun. That's not to say that I actually, pay for their subscription. I do the old Google technique, but, I don't know. In case the Google technique doesn't work for anyone out there, just change the Herald Sun part in the link to news.com.au, and you're all set. But just The Age is, when it's not even just the interface as well, but the standard of reporting seems to be dropping there as well. Like, they've got Emma Quayle there, Rowan Connolly, Jack Neal. They've got a few quality reporters, but unfortunately they've got the likes of Caro, who, no doubt she's the most highest paid journalist in the industry, and that's purely based on the fact she gets headlines for writing crap about clubs. And it's disappointing. It really is. Alright, so go on.
I was reading the other day that the Herald Sun has an average reading age of 7, I think, so that a 7-year-old could actually quite easily read the Herald Sun.
Yeah, and it's designed that way. That's why they have stuff like, one sentence per line and things like that, because it is how it's to develop. Because, and I mean, I don't know if people know, but I do study journalism at university, and it's how you're taught to, because you obviously want, as a news website, especially an online hub, you want people to be able to read it and understand it. And that's one of the reasons, differences between tabloids and, the old age broadsheet and all that sort of stuff, is in the different sort of things. And obviously the Herald Sun's meant to be easily digested, and I guess that's another reason why you go back to the Herald Sun, is because, it's a quick, nice, easy article to read, So, but I think we're moving off the topic of the ASADA investigation there. So, I want to talk about one other journalist too, who I think's been harshly dealt with by the fact he's an Essendon supporter. I think that's Mark Robinson. He's, in the true sense of a word, he's not the best journalist. He really isn't. But
shocking writer.
But he is. I think he's been pretty impartial either way. He's called Essendon out when he's needed to, and he's defended the club where he's needed to too. And I think he's one of those old-fashioned journalists who takes people on their word.
Yeah.
Which is
he would have been in a very difficult position. Like, on one hand he'd want to support his club, but on the other hand wanted to report what he knows about what's going on. And if I was in the same position, I'd want to protect my club as much as I could, and it would be very hard to remain impartial. And I think he's copped it from both sides. He's copped it from opposition supporters who say that he's just trying to defend Essendon and protect Essendon.
And he's copped it from the Essendon supporters too, yeah.
So he's in a very difficult position.
Yeah, and I think you only have to watch 360 semi-regularly to see that he really doesn't let on that he's an Essendon man. Like, he has on a couple of occasions, said that he's an Essendon supporter, but even still, when discussions turn to, he's not, like, you look at Jared Waitley and he's very, very open about his Geelong fanaticism. And I think Robbo, when it comes to impartiality, has been very harshly dealt with, and I think he's been, for the most part, pretty reasonable throughout the whole thing. Having said that, as a journalist, I think he leaves a lot to be desired, but I think he's an honourable one at that. Is there any other journalists you had in mind that you wanted to grill, praise, be neutral about?
I don't know if you classify him as a journalist, but I think Sam Newman has been very good in terms of supporting Essendon and telling things from a more neutral perspective. He's always good to listen to on the Footy Show, and he's been quite supportive of us, and I think a lot of people see him as a clown, but I think he's actually a very intelligent man, and I think he speaks a lot of truth.
Yeah, I think people really struggle to separate the onstage persona of Sam Newman and the actual very smart, intelligent man that's underneath.
Yeah.
Because, one of the most, the best sort of exchanges I've seen this year in this whole saga is when he baited Damian Barrett into, which he loves doing actually, it's pretty funny. I don't watch the Footy Show, to be honest. I just see the YouTube clips afterwards. I'm one of those ones who say they don't see it and legitimately haven't seen it. But there was the I got shown the conversation where Damian Barrett's like, Sam Newman's like, so does this make him more guilty or less guilty? And he's like, I don't. And then Damian Barrett gave his whole sort of smug sort of he's guilty sort of thing, whereas Sam Newman interjected with the whole, that's crap, he's innocent till guilty, and, he's no more guilty than he was yesterday, he's still innocent.
Yeah.
And I think it's exchanges like that that really show Sam's very intelligent underneath, and I think it really does show how hollow, though, the media is, where, he's not innocent till proven guilty, he's guilty until they can't say that he's innocent, can't say that he is.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think we'll get off the media for now. I think we'll talk about the end game when it comes to this side of thing and what we think the outcome will be. Now, there was a stage there where it seemed like premiership points, draft picks, and a fine would be perhaps the eventual punishment. However, with the revelation that AOD 9604 may not have actually been prohibited, it looks likely that it will be a fine and draft picks under the AFL's catch-all, bringing the game into disrepute charge. So, I guess I'll start with you, F. What do you think will come out of this investigation, and what do you think Essendon's punishment, if any, will be?
If we're found guilty of the AOD, I think we'll get we'll get $2 million fine and loss of first and second round draft picks. If we're found, I do not think under any circumstances that we'll lose draft picks.
As in over multiple years?
Yeah, no, any premiership points.
Oh, premiership, yep.
Yeah.
See, because I get frustrated when people bring up the example from Melbourne Storm in the context of the Essendon investigation, because fair enough if they stripped 2012 and all that sort of stuff, but Melbourne Storm lost points in the 2010 season they were currently playing because they were over the cap that year, whereas people argue that Essendon is obviously benefiting from the supplement program still this year, but then again, if they're benefiting this year, when does it stop?
Yeah.
So I don't know how you can take points off this year for saying that they're receiving an advantage and then allow them to take it for any other year until all the players on the current list are retired. So,
Yeah.
But what about you, Rasky? What do you see as the likely outcome of this investigation?
I'll definitely agree that I don't lose premiership points. Probably a couple of months ago, I wasn't so sure, but I've sort of changed my mind and think that we won't lose premiership points. But I think, we'll cop a big fine and possibly loss of draft picks. I don't think, well, especially after the news that came to light the other night, I don't think any players will be sanctioned. So probably, I'd say a fine and possibly some draft picks.
Yeah, I said it in the thread, but I don't know about you guys, but if we lose points, I'll be absolutely devastated. Because we haven't won a final since 2004, and this year looks like our best chance, easily our best chance since then. And if that got taken away from us, people say, it's just one season, but it would hurt. It would be absolutely devastating to the club, its supporters, the players, and the administration. So I'm confident that it won't happen. I'm getting more confident that it won't happen. But even still, the thought of it is pretty distressing, I'd say.
Well, I think what's more distressing, or even more distressing, is the fact that, it's almost finals time. It's only a few weeks away to the finals. If they had told us we're going to lose premiership points halfway through the season, maybe it wouldn't have been so bad. But if they tell us the night before we're due to play our finals that sorry, you're not participating this year, then I would be so angry.
Yeah, it's reading the a thread that shall not be named. I think we all know which one it is. Just imagine apostrophe. Where they were talking about opening the North Melbourne Social Club and having the bloody on the night before finals and having our announcement screen live there. And the thought of, well, not the actual bloody North Social Club thing, but the thought of having, the points taken off on the eve of finals really is painful, especially with the very likely chance that Carlton will be 9th.
Yeah.
My God, if we lose out to finals to them, I'm going down to the AFL with a pitchfork.
Yeah.
And or a flaming torch. We'll decide that if that happens. But but for now, I think we'll end on let's end on a high note. And I was suggested on the ASADA board that a drinking game could be made out of this. It's been started by Lance, and he, to posters who state obvious stuff like AOD is not improved under Section 0, he replied with drink. RFC Tiger 74 jumped on that bandwagon and started a list. Don't know about you guys, but for the next Essendon BigFooty meetup, I think we should get a drinking game going for the ASADA investigation.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sit there for half an hour, read through a thread, get someone to read through a thread, and every time one of those references come up, drink, Stephen Dank, drink, jab, drink. But I don't know about you. I'm really looking forward to it now, and I think the next one was being talked about before the Carlton game. So if anyone's still listening to this point, by all means, start trying to plan up a drinking game revolving around the ASADA investigation, and I'll be forever in debt. But I think that's all about we have time for now. We've gone over a lot of things. Couldn't go over everything, obviously. It's such a big scandal, and we don't know exactly what's actually happened, or there's just a lot still to play out. I want to give... And that's all we have time for today, folks. There's a lot of issues to discuss. Unfortunately, we just don't have enough time to discuss them all. As news comes to hand, no doubt we'll have updates in our regular podcasts. And until then, I hope you enjoyed listening today, if you're still listening to this point. And go Bombers. Thanks. And I want to thank the cast for coming in too. Thank you to Raskolnikov and eth-dog.
Thank you.